The dim control room of the spaceship felt like a tomb, the low hum of machinery punctuating the silence that enveloped us. I stood before the holographic map of Xylon 7, my heart racing as I studied the intricate details of the prison planet. It was notorious, a desolate place where time itself seemed to stand still, where immortal beings had been exiled for eons. My crew was gathered around, their faces illuminated by the eerie blue light of the projection, each of them a vital part of this rescue mission. "Captain, you sure about this?" Jake Thompson, our tech-savvy engineer, broke the silence. He was leaning over the console, his brow furrowed in concentration as he double-checked the ship's systems. "I mean, we're talking about a place that's meant to keep immortals locked away. What if they don't want to be rescued?" I turned to him, my resolve hardening. "It's not about what they want, Jake. It's about what they deserve. We stumbled upon that transmission for a reason. They deserve a chance at freedom, at a life beyond these walls." My voice was steady, echoing the determination I felt deep within. Lila Morales, our empathic medic, stepped closer. "But we should be careful. Immortal beings, they've lived for centuries. They're not just prisoners, they might have agendas of their own." Her dark eyes searched mine, seeking reassurance. I felt the weight of her concern, knowing she was right, but I couldn't let fear dictate our actions. "True," Marcus Reed, our hardened pilot, chimed in, his tone gruff. "But we've come this far, and we're not turning back now. I didn't sign up to fly a bunch of noble idiots to the ends of the universe just to turn around when things get tricky." I chuckled softly, trying to ease the tension in the room. "Well said, Marcus. But remember, we're not just a crew, we're a team. We need to look out for each other, especially when we land." With a nod, I activated the ship's descent protocols, and the control room shuddered as the engines roared to life. The holographic map flickered, showing the vast expanse of Xylon 7, its jagged mountains and sprawling metal structures. It was a stark contrast to the vibrant planets we had explored before. This place was a graveyard of hopes and dreams. As we descended through the atmosphere, the surface of Xylon 7 came into view, a haunting landscape of twisted metal and crumbling concrete. It looked like a nightmare, a place where light struggled to penetrate the gloom. I felt a chill run down my spine as I thought of the beings trapped within its depths. The ship landed with a thud, the ramp lowering to reveal an eerie silence outside. The air was thick with uncertainty, and I could feel the tension radiating from my crew. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. "Stay sharp, everyone," I instructed, my voice firm as I led the way down the ramp. "We don't know what we're walking into." The moment we stepped outside, the atmosphere felt heavy, as if the planet itself was aware of our presence. The landscape was littered with remnants of a once thriving civilization. Rusted machinery, broken-down vehicles, and walls adorned with faded murals that hinted at a past filled with life. "What happened here?" Lila whispered, her voice tinged with awe and sorrow. "It feels like a ghost town." "More like a tomb," Jake replied, scanning the area with his handheld scanner. "Look at this. Scans show signs of energy fluctuations. Whatever happened here, it wasn't just abandonment." Marcus moved ahead, his instincts kicking in. "Let's keep moving. We need to find a way inside the prison complex. The longer we stay out here, the more vulnerable we become." We navigated through the twisted metal and debris, the silence amplifying every sound, our footsteps crunching on the ground, the distant echo of the wind. It was a surreal experience, one that felt like stepping into a forgotten dream. Then, we stumbled upon what appeared to be the remnants of a failed escape attempt. A makeshift barricade of metal scraps and old vehicles lay strewn across the ground, half buried in the dust. My heart sank as I imagined the desperation that drove someone to try to escape this place. "Do you think they made it?" Lila asked, kneeling to examine the debris. "What if there were others who tried to get out?" I knelt beside her, brushing my fingers over the cold metal. "They might have, but it looks like they didn't succeed. We need to remember that this place is dangerous, not just for the prisoners but for us as well." As we continued our trek, I couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were watching us from the shadows. The air felt charged with something unknown, a latent energy that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. Suddenly, Jake stopped in his tracks, his face pale. "Captain, over here. Look at this." He pointed to a wall covered in strange symbols and markings, etched deeply into the surface. The symbols were ancient, their meanings lost to time, but they radiated a sense of foreboding. "What do you think it means?" Marcus asked, stepping closer to examine the carvings. "Hard to say," I replied, my fingers brushing against the surface. "But it might be a warning. We need to keep our wits about us." Before I could say more, a flicker of light caught my eye. A holographic projector flickered to life nearby, casting eerie shadows on the walls. We all stepped back, instinctively reaching for our weapons as the hologram solidified into the image of a former guard. The guard's expression was grave, his voice echoing as he spoke. "If you're seeing this, you've made a grave mistake. The prisoners here are unpredictable. They were not just locked away, they were contained for a reason. Trust no one." The hologram flickered, and he continued, "Beware of Magnus. He is powerful and ruthless. He has followers who will do anything to keep their freedom, or to take yours." The message ended abruptly, leaving us in stunned silence. We exchanged worried glances, the weight of the guard's warning settling heavily upon us. "Did he just say Magnus?" Lila asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Who is he?" I took a deep breath, trying to ignore the growing sense of dread. "I don't know, but we need to be prepared for anything. This mission just got a lot more complicated." Marcus clenched his jaw, his gaze fixed on the shadows beyond. "We need to find the prisoners before Magnus does. If he's as dangerous as that guard suggested, we can't afford to be caught off guard." Nodding, I felt a mix of determination and fear. We had come too far to turn back now, but the stakes were higher than I had anticipated. The line between captor and captive was blurring, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were stepping into a web of danger that could ensnare us all. "Let's move," I commanded, my voice steady despite the turmoil within. "We need to find a way into the prison complex and locate the immortals. They might hold the key to their own salvation, and ours." With renewed purpose, we pressed onward, each step echoing the uncertainty that lay ahead. The shadows whispered secrets, but I was determined to uncover the truth behind Xylon 7 and the ancient beings imprisoned within its depths. The air was thick with an unsettling tension as my crew and I stood before the massive cell block. The towering walls, once intended to contain the most formidable beings in the universe, loomed ominously around us, casting long shadows in the dim light. My heart raced as I led the way, each step echoing through the cold metal corridors. We had come here to free those trapped within, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were walking into a trap. "Are you sure this is the right way, Captain?" Jake asked, his brow furrowed as he scanned the flickering lights overhead. The holographic map projected in the air showed the layout of the prison complex, but the maze of cells felt like it had a mind of its own. "Trust me," I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "Alicia's cell should be just past this corridor." I glanced back at Lila and Marcus, their expressions equally wary. Lila clutched her medical kit tightly, her knuckles white, while Marcus kept his hand near the blaster at his hip. As we reached a heavy door marked with strange symbols, I pressed my palm against the scanner. The door hissed open, revealing a dimly lit room filled with ethereal light. In the center stood Alicia, her serene presence contrasting sharply with the chaos surrounding us. She was beautiful and haunting, with long silver hair cascading like a waterfall over her shoulders. Her eyes, deep and knowing, seemed to hold the weight of centuries. "Welcome, travelers," she said softly, her voice a melody that filled the room. "You come seeking freedom for us, but know that the path is fraught with danger." I stepped forward, drawn to her calmness. "We want to help you. We learned of your plight through an old transmission. What can you tell us about this place?" Alicia smiled, but there was sadness in her gaze. This prison was built by those who feared what they could not understand. They thought they could contain us, control our powers. But in doing so, they unleashed a darkness that now threatens not just us, but your kind as well. Jake shifted nervously, glancing at the walls as if they might close in on us. "What darkness? What do you mean?" Alicia raised her hand, and the air shimmered around us as she conjured a vision. I saw images of immortals, their faces twisted in agony, trapped within the energy fields of their cells. "We are not just prisoners. We are the guardians of knowledge and power beyond imagination. But our captors have twisted our purpose. They feed on our energy, using it to maintain their control." A chill ran down my spine. "So you're saying we're not just here to free you, but to stop something much larger?" "Indeed," Alicia replied, her expression grave. You must understand that not all of us desire freedom. Some, like Magnus, have become corrupted by their power and will stop at nothing to maintain their dominance. Magnus. I repeated, the name echoing ominously in my mind. What do we need to know about him? Before Alicia could respond, a loud crash reverberated through the corridor, shaking the walls. The door behind us burst open, and Magnus stormed in, flanked by a group of imposing figures. His muscular frame filled the room, and his eyes blazed with fury. What is this? You dare to speak of freedom in my presence? I felt a surge of adrenaline course through me. We came to help Alicia and the others. You can't keep them here. Magnus sneered, a low growl escaping his throat. Help? You think you can help them? You are nothing but pests, and I will crush you. Before I could react, Alicia stepped between us, her hands raised. Magnus, they mean no harm. They seek to understand. He scoffed, his gaze moving to me and my crew. Understanding? They are intruders.
Beak, pataticumans.
You think you can save us? You will only bring about your own demise. Just then, a sharp voice cut through the tension. Thorn, a shadowy figure I had seen in the holograms, appeared from the shadows, his smirk infuriating. Magnus, you know better than to underestimate them. They might just be the key to our escape, or our end. Magnus' eyes blazed with anger as he turned to Thorn. You would side with these fools? They are nothing but a distraction. Perhaps, Thorn replied, his tone playful yet cunning. But they also provide an opportunity. If they can help us escape, we might just turn the tide against you. The air crackled with hostility as I exchanged glances with my crew. We were caught in the crossfire of two powerful beings, and it felt as if the room itself was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable clash. Enough! I shouted, my voice trembling with both fear and determination. This is not the time for infighting. If we want to escape this place, we need to work together. Alicia's right, we can't allow Magnus to continue his reign of terror. Magnus laughed, a deep, menacing sound. You think you can sway me with words? You are foolish, Captain. Your bravado will be your downfall. Before I could respond, Magnus lunged forward, his massive fists aimed directly at me. I barely had time to react, diving to the side as he crashed into the wall, leaving a dent in the metal. My heart raced as I scrambled to my feet, adrenaline flooding my system. Marcus, get ready. I shouted, pulling my blaster from its holster. Lila moved to flank me, her eyes wide with fear but determined. Are you sure this is a good idea? She asked, glancing nervously at Magnus, who was now advancing toward us with a predatory glint in his eyes. Thorn stepped back, watching the confrontation with a mixture of amusement and concern. This is getting interesting, he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Shut up and help us. I snapped, my focus solely on Magnus as he charged again. I fired a shot, aiming for his leg, but he dodged easily, his agility surprising for someone of his size. You think your weapons can harm me? He roared, pushing beyond my range. I am more than flesh and bone. He's right, we need a better strategy, Jake interjected, his voice steady as he surveyed the room for an escape route. If we can just find a way to outsmart him. That's it. I exclaimed, a plan forming in my mind. We can't fight him head-on. We need to use the environment to our advantage. Alicia, still standing in the center of the chaos, raised her voice above the din. You must listen. Magnus is fueled by rage, but he is bound by the prison's power. If you can distract him, I can weaken his hold on this place. How? I asked, my mind racing. What do we need to do? Create a diversion. Draw him away from me, and I will channel the energy of this cell block to turn the tide, she explained, her eyes gleaming with determination. Okay, team, I said, my voice steadying as I took charge. We need to create a distraction. Jake, Lila, you flank Magnus from the left. Marcus, you and I will draw his attention. Alicia, when the moment is right, do what you need to do. They nodded, understanding the gravity of what we were about to do. The room felt charged with tension as we positioned ourselves, ready to execute our plan. I met Magnus' gaze, steeling myself for the confrontation ahead. Ready. I whispered to Marcus, who nodded, his expression fierce. Let's show him what we're made of, he replied, a glimmer of defiance in his eyes. As Magnus advanced, I shouted, "Hey, over here!" I darted to the side, trying to draw his attention away from Alicia. "You think you can run from me?" he bellowed, his voice echoing through the block. I could see the rage building in him, a storm brewing that threatened to consume everything in its path. With a swift motion, I fired another shot, this time aiming for a nearby control panel. Sparks flew as it exploded, filling the room with blinding light and smoke. "Now, Alicia!" I yelled, hoping against hope that our gamble would pay off. The chaos unfolded around us, with Magnus roaring in fury as he stumbled back, momentarily disoriented. I caught a glimpse of Alicia, her hands raised as she drew energy from the walls, a soft glow emanating from her fingertips. "Do it, Alicia!" I shouted, my heart racing as I braced for what was to come. In that moment, the lines between captor and captive blurred, and I felt the weight of our choices pressing down on us. We were not just fighting for the immortals, we were fighting for our own survival against a force that threatened to consume us all. As the tension reached its peak, I could only hope that our plan would be enough to turn the tide in our favor. As we moved deeper into the prison, the air thickened with a palpable sense of foreboding. The walls were lined with faded murals depicting the lives of the immortals, epic battles, moments of triumph, and scenes of sorrow. I could almost feel the weight of their stories pressing down on us. It was Jake who first noticed the hidden chamber, a narrow passage that concealed itself behind a broken wall. "This way!" he exclaimed, his voice a mix of excitement and urgency. We squeezed through the jagged opening, and what lay before us took my breath away. The chamber was dimly lit, illuminated by a soft, pulsating glow emanating from the center of the room. Ancient artifacts were strewn about, a mixture of tools, weapons, and relics that whispered of a tragic past. "Look at this," Lila said, her eyes wide as she picked up a delicate artifact, a crystal pendant that sparkled even in the low light. "These must be centuries old." "Yeah, but what do they mean?" I wondered aloud, stepping closer to the pulsating device that seemed to hum with energy. Its surface was smooth, almost like glass, and I felt an inexplicable urge to touch it. "Careful, Sarah," Jake warned, his brow furrowed. "We don't know what that thing is capable of." "It could be a weapon," Marcus added, his arms crossed. "Or worse, a trap." Ignoring their warnings, I reached out, my fingers grazing the surface. The moment I did, a surge of energy coursed through me, and visions flooded my mind, memories that weren't my own, scenes of battles fought and lost, of pain and suffering that transcended time. I stumbled back, gasping. "Are you okay?" Lila rushed to my side, concern etched on her face. "I don't know," I stammered, still reeling from what I had experienced. "It's as if it's alive." "Alive," Jake echoed, stepping forward. "Let me take a look." Before I could protest, he moved closer to the device, examining it with the analytical eye of an engineer. "If we can figure out how it works, maybe we can use it to amplify our escape signal," he said, his excitement bubbling over. "That's a dangerous gamble," Marcus countered. "We have no idea what it could do. We could end up triggering a lockdown or worse. Or we could finally get those immortal captives out of here," I argued, my determination surging. "We came here to help them, didn't we?" Lila nodded, but I could see the worry in her eyes. "I just don't want to make matters worse. We need to be careful." "Fine," Jake sighed, running a hand through his hair. "But if we don't try, we might as well be leaving them to rot in this hellhole." As the tension in the room escalated, I could feel the weight of leadership pressing down on me. My crew trusted me to make the right call, but I wasn't sure what that was anymore. The device pulsed softly, almost invitingly, as if it sensed our conflict. Suddenly, the air shifted, thick with a sense of impending danger. "We should get out of here," Marcus urged, glancing toward the entrance. "We're sitting ducks." But before we could make a decision, the ground trembled beneath us, and the chamber was suddenly filled with the sound of heavy footsteps. My heart sank as Magnus and his followers stormed in, their faces twisted with rage. "Look what we have here," Magnus growled, his eyes locking onto me. "A bunch of meddling humans playing with things they don't understand." "Stay back," I shouted, instinctively stepping in front of my crew. "We're not here to fight." "Too late for that," he sneered, motioning for his followers to spread out. "You've already made your choice." Chaos erupted as Magnus lunged at us. Lila screamed, and I felt a rush of adrenaline as I pushed her behind me. Jake. Marcus. We need to get to the exit. The room became a battleground, artifacts clattering to the ground as we scrambled to defend ourselves. Jake grabbed a metal rod, swinging it at one of Magnus' men, while Lila darted to the side, trying to find cover. I caught sight of Magnus, his brutish form barreling toward us, and my heart raced. Sarah. Marcus yelled, dodging a punch aimed at him. We need to split up. We can't fight them all. Right. I nodded, my mind racing. Lila, you take the left, Jake, circle around the back. I'll hold Magnus off. I could see the hesitation in their eyes, but there was no time to argue. Go. I shouted, and they moved, each of them executing their part of the plan. Magnus approached, a sneer on his lips. You think you can stop me? He taunted, swinging a fist that barely missed my face. I ducked and rolled, scrambling to my feet. Get away from them. I shouted, lunging toward him with every ounce of courage I could muster. But Magnus was faster, pushing me back with a brutal shove that sent me crashing into a wall. Just as I regained my footing, I heard a familiar voice cutting through the chaos. Stop. Alicia stood at the entrance, her presence commanding attention. You don't want to do this, Magnus. He hesitated, his eyes narrowing. You're still trying to protect them? His voice dripped with disdain. Alicia's expression softened. They're not your enemy. You've forgotten what we're fighting for. In that moment, the tension shifted, and I seized the opportunity. Alicia, we need to get out of here. The device. But before I could finish, Magnus charged at her, and time seemed to slow. No. I screamed, lunging forward, but it was too late. Alicia intercepted him, her movements graceful yet powerful. You don't understand, Magnus. This ends now. The fight escalated again, but I could see that Alicia was trying to reason with him, trying to reach the part of him that still cared for our shared cause. It was a risky move, but I had no other choice. I turned to my crew, urgency in my voice. We have to get to the device. It might be our only way out. Sarah, we can't just leave her. Lila cried, her voice breaking. She's buying us time. I snapped, desperation fueling my words. We can't waste it. Together, we rushed toward the device, but the chaos around us was deafening. Alicia was holding her ground against Magnus, but I could see the strain in her stance. She was powerful, but he was relentless. Now. I shouted, and Jake reached for the device, his fingers trembling as he hovered over it. We need to activate it. Are you sure? He asked, his eyes darting between the device and the fight unfolding before us. Do it. I urged, my heart pounding. We need a signal. Just as Jake pressed a sequence of buttons, a blinding light erupted from the device, illuminating the chamber. The energy surged, enveloping us in a cocoon of brilliance. It felt alive, responding to our desperation, to our need for freedom. But just as hope flickered in my chest, a deafening roar shattered the moment. Magnus' furious bellow reverberated through the chamber as he broke free from Alicia's hold. My stomach dropped as I realized he was coming for us. Run! I screamed, grabbing Lila's hand and pulling her toward the exit. We dashed through the chaos, the light from the device illuminating our path as we fled. Behind us, Alicia confronted Magnus, her voice a fierce whisper I couldn't quite catch. Go! I urged my crew, adrenaline surging through me. We can't let her sacrifice herself for us. But as we reached the passage, I turned back for one last look. Alicia stood her ground, confidence radiating from her as she faced Magnus. In that moment, I felt a pang of guilt, a realization that our fight for freedom could come at a terrible cost. Alicia! I cried, but my voice got lost in the cacophony. She turned briefly, a glimmer of hope in her eyes, and then she was gone, consumed by the shadows of battle. We raced down the corridor, the weight of her sacrifice heavy on my heart. As we burst out into the open air of the prison, I knew we had to regroup, to make sense of what had just happened. But the guilt gnawed at me, a relentless reminder that our fight was far from over. The line between captor and captive had blurred, and now, I was more determined than ever to find a way to honor Alicia's sacrifice and ensure that no one else suffered in silence. As we stumbled into the dimly lit control room, the air felt thick with tension, a stark reminder of Alicia's sacrifice that still weighed heavily on my heart. The flickering screens and scattered debris told the story of a once-functioning hub, now reduced to a ghost of its former self. I could feel the heaviness in my crew's demeanor as we settled into our makeshift command center, their faces reflecting a mix of determination and grief. "Let's try to get the communication systems up and running," I instructed, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. Marcus and Jake immediately moved to the main console, their fingers flying over the keys as they began to assess the damage. Lila, ever the empath, lingered near the door, her eyes scanning the shadows as if sensing the ghosts of the past that haunted this place. "Do you think anyone even knows we're here?" Lila asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I turned to her, forcing a reassuring smile. "We have to believe they do. We need to reach out to the rest of the prisoners. If we can unite them against Magnus, Alicia's sacrifice won't be in vain. Even if they're all just waiting for a chance to take us out?" Marcus shot back, his skepticism palpable. Alicia was the only one we could trust, and now she's gone. We can't just assume they'll follow us blindly. "Not blindly," I replied, my heart racing as I felt the weight of leadership settling once again on my shoulders. "We need to show them that we're on their side, that we want to help. Magnus can't be allowed to continue his reign of terror." "Easier said than done," Jake grumbled, his brow furrowed as he peered at the damaged control panel. "This is a mess. I don't know if I can get this to work." I stepped closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You can do this, Jake. We need you. Just focus on what you can fix." I felt a surge of urgency coursing through me. We didn't have much time. The longer we stayed in one place, the more vulnerable we became. Lila approached me, her expression softening. "What if we could find Thorn? He knows this place better than we do." Marcus scoffed. "You trust him? After what happened with Magnus? He could just be leading us into a trap." "I'm not saying we trust him blindly," I said, my voice rising slightly. "But we have to consider every option. If he has information that could help us rally the other prisoners, we'd be foolish not to seek him out." "Fine, but I'm not promising to like it," Marcus replied, crossing his arms defensively. Just then, the control console sparked to life, and Jake let out a whoop of excitement. "I've got something. The comms are partially operational." "Great!" I exclaimed, my heart racing with a glimmer of hope. "Can you send a message?" "I can try," he said, his fingers dancing over the keys. "But it might take a few minutes to get a signal strong enough to reach the ship, or anyone else." "Let's make it count," I urged. "We need to be clear about what we're asking for. We need their help, and we need them to understand that Magnus is the real enemy here." As Jake worked on the communication systems, I felt a knot of anxiety tighten in my chest. I couldn't shake the fear that Magnus would soon discover our presence and come looking for us. The thought of leading my crew into a confrontation with him, especially after everything we had just faced, sent chills down my spine. "Do you really think we can convince Thorn to help us?" Lila asked, her brow furrowed in concern. I hesitated. "I think we have to try. He's cunning, and he knows how to navigate this world. If we can get him on our side, we might stand a chance against Magnus." "Or he might just sell us out," Marcus interjected, his voice laced with doubt. "True, but we can't let fear dictate our actions," I replied firmly. "We need to take risks if we're going to make a difference." As the minutes passed, I could feel the tension building in the air. Jake's fingers flew across the console, but the silence that surrounded us was deafening. Each second felt like an eternity, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Finally, Jake turned to me, his expression a mix of frustration and determination. "I think I can send a message, but it'll be short. I need to make sure the signal gets through." "Do it," I urged, my heart pounding in my chest. He nodded, typing furiously before finally hitting the send key. "It's done. Now we wait." "Wait for what?" Marcus asked, pacing the small room. "For Magnus to come crashing in here? We need to move, Sarah." "Not yet," I said, standing my ground. "We need to give them time to respond. We can't leave until we know what we're dealing with." Just then, the door creaked open, and we all froze, our hearts racing. I held my breath, waiting for the figure to step into the light. It was Thorn, his sly grin wide as he strolled into the room. Well, well, well," he drawled, his tone dripping with amusement. "Looks like you've found yourselves in quite the predicament." "Thorn," I said, my voice steady despite my surprise. "What are you doing here?" "I could ask the same of you, Captain," he replied, his eyes sparkling with mischief. "But I'm more interested in how you plan to deal with Magnus." "Maybe we'll start by dealing with you," Marcus shot back, his voice low and threatening. "Ah, but I'm not your enemy," Thorn countered, his demeanor unruffled. "In fact, I might just be the ally you're looking for." "Why would we trust you?" I challenged, crossing my arms. "You have your own agenda, and I'm not falling for your tricks." "Trust is a tricky thing, isn't it?" Thorn said, stepping closer. "But I have information that could be invaluable to you. I know of a hidden passage that leads directly to Magnus' lair. If you want to confront him, this is your best shot." "Why should we believe you?" Lila asked, her brow furrowing in skepticism. "Because I know you're desperate," Thorn replied, his voice smooth like silk. "And because I know Magnus won't stop until he has you all taken care of. You're a threat to his power, and he'll come for you soon." I exchanged glances with my crew, each of us weighing the risks and rewards. The thought of confronting Magnus head-on was terrifying, but the prospect of an escape route was tantalizing. "Tell us more," I said, keeping my voice steady. Thorn flashed that infuriating grin again, clearly enjoying our dilemma. "Follow me, and I'll show you the way. But remember, trust is earned, not given. I expect you to keep your eyes open." "Lead the way," I said, steeling myself for what lay ahead. As Thorn turned to lead us out of the control room, I felt a mixture of dread and determination. We were on the brink of a confrontation that could change everything, and I knew that whatever happened next would test our resolve and challenge everything I thought I knew about trust, loyalty, and the true nature of freedom. As we moved deeper into the labyrinthine corridors of the prison, the atmosphere grew heavier, almost suffocating. The walls, once bright with faded colors, were now shrouded in shadows, each corner echoing the whispers of forgotten souls. Thorn led the way, his figure darting from one darkened space to another, a ghost in this prison of the damned. I walked beside him, my heart racing with a mix of apprehension and hope. The stakes were high, and I could feel the weight of my team's expectations pressing down on my shoulders. "Stay close and keep your voices down," Thorn whispered, casting a cautious glance over his shoulder. "Magnus has ears everywhere." I nodded, glancing back at Marcus and Lila, who were a few steps behind, their expressions a mixture of determination and doubt. Marcus had openly questioned Thorn's intentions since our first encounter, and I could sense the tension simmering just beneath the surface. "Why do you care about taking down Magnus?" Marcus shot back, his voice low but laced with skepticism. "What's in it for you?" Thorn's eyes flickered with annoyance before he turned to face Marcus. "You think I'm doing this out of the goodness of my heart? I have my reasons, just like you. Magnus has become a liability for all of us. If we don't stop him, none of us will survive." "Great, but how do we know you're not just playing both sides?" Marcus pressed. "Because I'm tired of living under his thumb."
Torne snapped, frustration spilling over.
"Do you think I enjoy this? I'm offering you a way out. If you don't want to take it, that's your choice." I stepped in, sensing that the argument was spiraling. "We need to focus. We can sort out trust issues later. Right now, we have to find Magnus and put an end to his reign." As we continued, the dim light flickered above us, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The air was thick with the smell of damp metal and decay, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Thorn paused at a junction, listening intently. "Magnus is planning something," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "I overheard some of his followers talking about eliminating anyone who opposes him. That includes you." "Then we need to move quickly," I said, adrenaline surging through me. "If we're going to confront him, we can't waste any more time." We pressed on, and my mind raced with thoughts of Alicia's sacrifice. I had to honor her memory by ensuring that her death was not in vain. The weight of leadership felt heavier with each passing moment, and I could feel the burden of responsibility growing. As we rounded another corner, we stumbled upon a small alcove. I recognized it from the schematics we'd studied. It was a vantage point overlooking the main chamber where Magnus held court. The room was expansive, filled with the remnants of battles long past, broken chains, discarded weapons, and the echoes of cries for freedom. Peering through the shadows, I caught sight of Magnus. He stood tall, a figure of brute strength, surrounded by a group of his loyal followers. Their faces were hardened, eyes filled with malice. The air crackled with tension as Magnus spoke, his voice booming. "Those who defy me will meet their end," he declared, slamming his fist on a nearby table. "We will not allow traitors to disrupt our reign. Anyone who supports the humans will face my wrath." I felt a chill run down my spine. The intensity of his aura was palpable, and it sent a wave of fear through me. I exchanged a glance with Marcus, and I could see the unease mirrored in his eyes. "We need to act," I whispered. "If we wait too long, he'll tighten his grip even more." Thorn nodded, his expression serious. "We can use the element of surprise to our advantage. If we time it right, we can catch him off guard." "Right, but we need a distraction," Marcus chimed in. "Something big enough to draw his attention." "I can create a diversion," Lila offered, her voice steady. "I've got a few tricks up my sleeve. Just give me a moment." As Lila began to formulate her plan, I felt the weight of leadership pressing down on me even more. I had to make the right call, not just for my team but for all the prisoners who were suffering at Magnus' hands. "While Lila sets up the distraction, we'll flank him from the sides," I instructed, my voice firm. "Once we engage, we need to aim for his followers first. They're his strength." With the plan set in motion, I watched Lila slip away to prepare her diversion. My heart raced as I thought of all the lives that hung in the balance. I could feel the tension in the air, the anticipation of the impending confrontation. "Are you ready for this?" Thorn asked, his voice low as he leaned closer to me. "You know Magnus won't go down without a fight." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I have to be ready. For Alicia, for everyone who's suffered. We can't let fear dictate our actions. As Lila's diversion erupted behind us, a brilliant flash of light followed by a loud explosion, I felt the adrenaline surge through my veins. "Now!" I shouted, and we charged forward, determination fueling each step. We erupted into the main chamber, the chaos of Lila's distraction throwing Magnus and his followers into disarray. I felt the rush of battle coursing through me, the primal instinct to fight for freedom igniting a fire in my heart. "Captain, watch out!" Marcus yelled as a follower lunged at me, a weapon raised high. I ducked just in time, adrenaline sharpening my reflexes as I countered with a swift kick, sending him sprawling to the ground. "Keep moving," I urged, my voice cutting through the din of chaos. I could see Magnus at the center, his eyes blazing with fury as he rallied his followers. "Fools!" he roared, his voice echoing off the walls. "You think you can take me down? You will all perish." I locked eyes with him, feeling the weight of his gaze. This was it. The moment we had worked so hard to reach. "Enough of this." I shouted back, my voice steady despite the chaos.
"Your tyranny ends here, Magnus."
He turned, surprise flickering across his face. The tension in the room was palpable, the air thick with anticipation. In that moment, everything hung in the balance. The lives of my crew, the fate of the prisoners, the very essence of freedom. As we clashed with his followers, the fight became a whirlwind of chaos. I could hear Marcus shouting orders, Lila tending to the wounded, and Thorn weaving through the fray like a shadow. But amidst the chaos, I could sense shifts in loyalty, betrayals lurking just beneath the surface. The line between ally and enemy blurred with each passing moment. "Stay close," I yelled, trying to keep my crew together, but my heart raced with the uncertainty of it all. Would we emerge victorious, or would we become just another set of prisoners in this hellish place? As I faced off against one of Magnus' elite guards, I knew that this was more than just a battle. It was a fight for our very souls, a struggle for a future where hope could thrive. And I would not back down. Not now, not ever. As the chaos of battle swirled around me, I felt the weight of every decision pressing down like the heavy atmosphere of Xylon 7. Magnus stood before us, towering and furious, his voice a thunderclap amidst the cacophony. "You think you can save them? You've only scratched the surface of what they truly are." His eyes burned with a ferocity that sent shivers down my spine. I glanced at Marcus, his jaw clenched tight, ready for a fight, while Lila clutched her medkit, her brow furrowed in worry. Jake was at the control panel, frantically trying to reroute power from the defense systems to give us an edge. "Captain, we need to know what we're up against," he shouted over the noise. Magnus' lips curled into a sardonic smile. You're fighting against fate, humans. Immortality is a curse gifted by the device you foolishly stumbled upon. He gestured dramatically, as if the very walls of the prison could bear witness to his proclamation. It feeds off the souls of those it captures, granting us eternal life at the cost of others' freedom. Destroy it, and we cease to exist. A chill ran through me as I processed his words. If we destroyed the device, we would be sealing the fate of Alicia and the others. But they deserve a chance to be free. I yelled back, my voice steady despite the turmoil around us. You can't hold them captive forever. Magnus scoffed. Freedom? What is freedom to an immortal? A fleeting whisper. We are guardians, and you're too blind to see the truth. His voice was a mix of anger and desperation, and I couldn't help but feel a twinge of empathy for the twisted logic he wielded. Just as I was grappling with his words, Thorn's voice cut through the din, smooth and sly. Magnus, your time is up. The humans have a point. He stepped forward, his eyes glinting with cunning. You've lost control of this prison, and it's time for a new era. What are you playing at? I asked, my heart racing with suspicion. Thorn had always been a wild card, his loyalties shifting like the shadows around us. I'm playing for power, my dear captain, he replied, a smirk dancing on his lips. And I plan to harness the device for myself. Imagine the strength I could wield. Before I could respond, a sudden burst of energy illuminated the chamber, and my heart dropped. Alicia materialized from the shadows, her presence radiating an ethereal glow. Thorn, you fool. You don't understand what you're meddling with. I blinked in disbelief. Alicia? But how? She raised a hand, her expression fierce yet resolute. I'm not gone, Sarah. I've been awakening my powers, the ones this prison sought to suppress. Together, we can break the cycle. Together. Thorn scoffed, but there was an edge of fear in his voice. You think the humans can help you? They're just pawns in this game. I took a step towards her, feeling a surge of hope. Alicia, if we destroy the device, will it free the souls trapped inside? Yes, she nodded, her eyes locking onto mine. But it will also mean sacrificing my existence. It's the only way to truly free us all. The weight of her words crashed over me. The lives of the immortals hung in the balance, and yet the thought of losing Alicia again was unbearable. We can find another way. I protested, desperation creeping into my voice. No, Sarah. This is the path we must take. She stepped closer, her presence calming amidst the storm of chaos. You must trust me. We have a greater purpose, and the universe needs guardians like us. The prison shook violently, and I felt the urgency in the air. Then let's do it. I shouted, rallying my team. We'll destroy the device and break this cycle once and for all. Magnus roared in fury, his followers closing in around us. You think you can just walk away from this? You're all fools. With Alicia at my side, I could feel the collective strength of our determination. We will not be your pawns any longer. I yelled, my voice cutting through the din like a blade. A fierce battle erupted around us, and I could hear the clash of metal and the cries of the imprisoned immortals. Thorn, realizing he was losing control, lunged toward the device, his motives clear. I will take what's mine. Not if I can help it. I shouted, racing after him. Alicia surged forward, her aura glowing brighter as she confronted Thorn. You'll never wield its power for your selfish desires. In that moment, I felt the connection with Alicia deepen. I reached for her hand, and a rush of energy flowed between us. Together. I urged, and she nodded, her eyes fierce with determination. As we approached the device, I could feel its energy pulsating like a heartbeat, resonating with the souls trapped within. We have to channel our strength. Alicia cried, her voice rising above the chaos. Focus on the light, Sarah. I steadied my breath, envisioning the energy building within us, a force greater than any single being. Thorn lunged, but Alicia conjured a barrier of light, holding him back. Now, Sarah. I raised my hands, feeling the warmth of Alicia's power coursing through me. For freedom. I shouted, and with a surge of strength, we unleashed our combined energy toward the device. The impact was cataclysmic. A blinding light erupted, engulfing the chamber and shaking the very foundation of the prison. I felt the souls within the device breaking free, their cries turning from anguish to liberation. As the prison walls crumbled around us, I caught a glimpse of Magnus, his face twisted in disbelief as everything he had fought for began to unravel. "No!" he screamed, but it was too late. With a deafening roar, the device shattered, sending a shockwave that knocked us all to the ground. The energy released was overwhelming, and I felt myself being pulled into a whirlwind of light. Alicia's grip on my hand tightened as we were enveloped in the brilliance. "You did it, Sarah!" she exclaimed, her voice filled with joy amid the chaos. As the dust settled, I looked around, my heart racing. The prison lay in ruins, but the air was filled with a sense of hope and freedom. The immortals, once captives, now stood beside us, their expressions a mix of gratitude and wonder. But as I turned to Alicia, a flicker of sadness crossed her face. "You must understand," she said softly, "my time is ending. The sacrifice was necessary."
No, Alicia.
"You can't go," I pleaded, panic rising in my chest. She smiled gently, her essence shimmering like stardust. "This was my purpose, Sarah. You are now the guardians. Protect the universe and those who cannot protect themselves." As her form began to fade, I felt a profound loss, but also a renewed sense of responsibility. The immortals around me looked to me with a mixture of hope and expectation. "I promise," I whispered, tears blurring my vision. "We will be the guardians you envisioned." And as Alicia's light dissipated into the cosmos, I knew our journey was just beginning. The fate of the universe now rested in our hands, and we would honor her legacy by forging a new path toward freedom.